Here we go. We are live. Welcome, people, for our fourth in the series of our COVID-19 support series, where this one we're focusing on PR and communications in a crisis situation. And as Dwayne has really kindly pointed out in some material that he sent it out to me, there is a big difference between an issue and a crisis. And right now, we're in a bit of a crisis. So, Dwayne Alexander, Danny Simpson, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves briefly to give us a little bit of a background of who you are, where you're from, and what your expertise are. And then we're going to rip into some of this really juicy conversation around the current state and what we should be doing. So I'll let you start off, Dwayne, just because you're top left of my screen.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, Alexander PR, our core team's been together since about 2005. 205 sounds a bit young, doesn't it? 2005, specializing in sort of reputation management and issues in crisis. So we've seen it all from the earthquakes through to financial and legal issues. You name it, we've seen it. And much like Danny, this is uncharted territory for many, but it really just requires the same leadership principles in any crisis. Danny?
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. So my background was a former journalist and editor, so used to be, one sort of writing about issues, not as, or crises not as big as this, of course, but I guess that's what I, now bring to Dynamic Media as a director there. So, like you, Dwayne, dealing with reputation management issues for clients, primarily around the North Island. And crikey, it spans everything from, sort of financial issues to operational tech. Generally, there's humans at the centre of all of it, though. So that's always sort of our focus. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, man, this whole last, I'd say 2 weeks, but really the last 10 days has been a state of shock for the nation, where people just don't know what the hell's going on. So we were talking a little bit leading into this around how, from a business perspective, we're sort of segmented in three areas. Dwayne, what's your take in regards to where we're at as far as businesses and business continuity goes? And then we can talk about how we can deal with those things.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. And that's why tone is everything, right? And we discussed earlier, can you remember in the 80s, the 5-year plan? Well, now it's the 5-hour plan for most businesses. We can't look at all businesses in one foul swoop. So I think John Key mentioned the other day weird, rough figures, which sort of made rough sense in my head. Sort of a third of New Zealand business is sort of essential business and ramping up and trying to help, trying to be part of the solution and really trying to create and make it all better for the rest of us. Whereas a third of New Zealand business, the volumes are down, the business is down, and they also, they're struggling to find the demand side and trying to reinvent themselves. And then, of course, another third is literally considering how they put the business on the shelf at this stage, or indeed how they go and stop the business. So you have to address those different segments in very, very different communication ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let's start with that sector that probably most people that are hurting in now, that sector that's just not able to operate, or they are in full crisis mode where they don't really know whether they've got a future or not. Danny, I'll let you take first crack at this.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
Look, I think, Glenn, if yes, Dwayne's absolutely right in terms of, communicating with those within those sorts of, different sectors kind of differently. But if there was something that, could suggest that is, is true across all three of those is, how those businesses need to be communicating with their staff right now. And I think the one thing that they really need to be mindful of there is that transparency and trying to be as clear in terms of what their messaging is as possible, to the point where it's actually okay to say, we actually don't know where we are right now, or giving them some kind of an understanding of this is where we're at. We don't know A, B, and C. We're trying to figure that out, and keeping that communication going. you know, with the team, you know, on as regularly as possible, and trying to be really clear as much as you can with the information you're providing them. And having a conversation actually with a colleague just earlier was, you know, don't bullshit people. You know, I think at a time when people just really need to feel, you know, that they're involved in as much of a part of a solution or, you know, a team as possible, is that they can kind of sniff that out if they feel like you're trying to pull the wool. So I think, you know, try and just be as transparent with your team as possible at the moment. Yeah. And
there's a couple of leaders that have surfaced in my circle, and sort of, you know, having a chat with various clients and people in the marketplace. If you need to adapt your vision right now and look at your skill set, look at your team's skill set, and look at how you can pivot, then that is another opportunity. You can't just go blindly into what you've done before. And it's interesting, the power of vision and single-minded leadership during this period. A little anecdote, 10 years ago in the GFC, one of our clients, a social change enterprise, her name is Minnie Baragwana, she's CEO, ex-Auckland Council. They launched their business as the GFC hit. And it was just like, what the hell do you do, you know? But essentially, they had such a bold vision, and they, at that stage, they stuck to their guns, right? And they managed to attract $1 million from the government in terms of supporting accessibility and disability. So that was staring at defeat, you know, the GFC, and yet they were able to turn it around to suit their target audience and their company. So I guess that's what our challenge for all businesses out there. What skill set do you have now? How can you reevaluate your vision and pivot in some areas as well?
So what was it that they did?
Minnie Baragwanath and her team, she had identified, she had an access challenge. She was blind, okay, legally blind, and she didn't believe that New Zealand businesses across the country were addressing that market in an appropriate way, so that we weren't designing our websites, our service levels, how we, you know, our customer journeys, all that kind of thing. So her vision basically was, this is required now as it is required in any period, even in the GFC. And in fact, they hooked onto, at the time, the Rugby World Cup later on, and it all sort of worked. But that works for somebody with a strong vision at the right place and the right time. Sometimes, and Danny, you'll bear me up, as a business, you're going to have to just audit where you're at right now, looking at your balance sheet, looking at what reserves you've got, looking at the team you've got, and say, how am I going to adapt? We've got another AI, artificial intelligence client, digital startup. They came up with this brilliant concept in terms of helping the hotel industry. So literally communicating with the entire hotel industry, where you can book and speak concurrently to all your customers in an artificial intelligence way, but it's trained by the best hoteliers in the world, right? They haven't sat on their laurels. They're still working with companies in Australia and America and UK, and they're building for the future, but they haven't stopped. They've said, how do we help? I don't know if you've been on a call recently to any government department. You're waiting, and it's no fault of their own. The systems are just not geared up to handle these kind of volumes. So they're doing a pivot right now. They've taken their strengths and weaknesses, and they've said, okay, the hotel sector is going to go into a long-term strategic bucket. Who can we help right now? And boy, wouldn't we benefit from having instant, immediate answers from either the RRD or MSD or various government departments. So that's a clear example of a company that is acting nimble, showing leadership, and not waiting for next week's announcement, for example.
Yeah, for sure. So on that, Danny, I'm going to jump ahead on here because you brought it up. Next week's announcement. Yeah. Right now, we're in a holding pattern, right? Everyone's going, I've got no idea what's going to happen as we come out of this. And my take on it is right now there is such a focus on health and well-being, rightly so, but we're missing the news, the insights, and the data around the impact on business. It's starting to trickle out, but in the next couple of weeks, boy, I think the general public of New Zealand is going to be in for a big shock. And I think I'll let you talk to next week's announcement, Dani, to start with. You know, what can we expect? Not necessarily in regards to the announcement itself, but what do we expect to be happening over the coming weeks, and what should we be thinking of as business leaders on how we deal with either scenario?
Well, I mean, and again, it's going to be different for, you know, different businesses. But I think the biggest thing, and it, you know, kind of flows on from what Jane was talking about in terms of how you pivot and what those opportunities look like. Having those conversations part of your wider team with your client base to understand, you know, where we can make further changes, what are the opportunities look like at the moment. And I think, you know, as a nation, we're really resilient anyway, and you know, I think it's kind of scary, sort of a couple of camps that, you know, people that I've spoken to who are, you know, over here quite sort of resistant to change, and this is what we've always done, and maybe we can just get back on track, you know, come April 6th, and we've got, you know, say 2 more weeks of being in lockdown, that we'll just get back to it. Well, actually, you kind of need to be over here in the other camp and go, look, let's take your head out of the sand for a minute and go, what if we actually aren't? And regardless, how can we actually think about doing things better and doing things smarter and using this as an opportunity? You know, the silver lining here is that we've got some time to actually work on our businesses rather than in them every day, and look at what that opportunity is to be smarter, be more productive, be more effective, you know, and viewing it as an opportunity here.
Yeah, for sure. Dwayne?
Yeah, and to add to that, no matter which direction the announcement goes next week, whether lockdown is firmly in place for another few weeks or few months, or whether we are able to come out of it, the same rules apply. As long as your tone is correct, we don't believe you can over communicate with your existing customers and network. It's a perfect opportunity. We talk about the sort of concentric circles model, where you start with your closest set, yes, your family, your friends of friends, then you go to your existing clients, your long-term loyal clients, then you go to your new set of clients who've come on, then you go to the people who were maybe thinking of using you in the last year, but maybe it's on the shelf, then you go outwards and outwards. So many people in business, they think, well, let's go to the strangers, let's just go out there, you know, but you start in the center and work your way out. And those phone calls have been so invaluable to us as a business, and indeed our clients as well. Remaining connected, hearing people's ideas, their emotions, seeing them on Zoom like this has been fascinating. I mean, lovely stories of, you know, a certain amount of 70+ clients who've done so well in their life, they're excellent at what they do, but they may not be as good at Zoom. So picking up the phone and just helping them connect, and it's like an aha moment for these people, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's connecting them with their world. So I think in summary, next week when Jacinda talks, we're all going to have to look at our balance sheets. We're all going to have to look at our staff. We're going to have to look at our value proposition, and then start communicating again in another way, I feel.
Yeah, a great point on the Facebook live stream from the man who's never short of opinion, and I love him for it, Vaughan Winiata.
Yeah.
He said, a person under severe financial duress is usually not forthcoming and communicative, and it's pretty much just a fact, he says.
Yeah.
And I agree with him in that. What I will say on my response to that, Vaughan, it doesn't make it right. Communication still needs to happen. It just means that if you're not communicating, then it's going to create more confusion, more fear, especially amongst staff and your other stakeholders. But
yeah, and is he talking about the business owner in that instance, or is he talking about a client, for example?
Most likely the owner, I would say. It's hard to get context when it's just a statement, but
Yeah.
We've seen that time and time again with businesses that are under financial duress. I've been probably fielding 8 to 10 calls a day from either clients or businesses that just need some advice. Because I've put my hand up and said, look, just give me a call. I don't care about the fee right now.
Yeah.
And so many of them are scared to actually talk to their clients, let alone their staff, around how devastating the last couple of weeks has been for them financially and their outlook.
Yeah, and I think as hard as it is to share some of those really tough messages now, I think the soft stuff actually really matters in a situation like this. That it's really difficult to deal with with communicating some tough stuff, letting people go and what have you. But actually framing that in a way that people still need to feel that that they matter in amongst all of this. It's and I've seen a bit of that sort of coming through from some of the clients that I'm working with. Is just the messaging is right, but how do you actually present that in a way that people still feel like that they matter, and they're a family. That doesn't change, in a situation like this. How do you bring them together and make them feel a little bit loved?
Yeah.
And just to answer that query as well, Glenn, I think sometimes you have to persevere with communication, and the first communication doesn't work, and sometimes you have to change tack. Sometimes it's a phone or an email or a text or a combination of all of the above. But either way, you need to know your true situation. That's vital. Yep. So rather than waiting 2 or 3 weeks and finding out that your employer is in trouble, or indeed your client's business has failed, rather know now, and that will help you understand what your own options are, because now it's time to look at your own skills, your own experience, and how you can use that in the next 6, 12, 18 months, either to benefit your current company or indeed your own business or somebody else's business. You have to look after you and your family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've done internally with ours, we've got an accelerator program for our top clients, and we have set up a daily huddle with all of the people in that accelerator program that they can come in and just temperature check. How are you actually feeling today? What are the actions that you're going to do today? Whether you've got a business around you or not, or you can operate, it's still important to have some sort of semblance of connection and routine in your lives and things like that. And I think when, what would your advice be? Because there is, right, we're talking SME, and we are a SME and our clients are traditionally SME. But for the medium-sized businesses and the corporate businesses that are out there, one thing, I don't know whether you've seen the email that came out from Air New Zealand the other day, either of you? Yeah. In and around the current climate, that they're a 12,000 staff member organisation, a realistic breakdown of projected revenues, and the fact that they're probably going to have to cut 3,500 jobs and become a domestic airline that looks to the future of being an international player once again. I thought, for me personally, I felt that was an amazing piece of communication and brave to be able to just front foot it.
Really was, actually. I mean, they couldn't have been any more clear in their message, which, and that same message to, internally and externally, that, we're left with no doubt as to just how difficult this is for them and their team.
I know. And I think the good leaders are continuing to have daily communication with their staff, no matter what the size of your business. But some businesses have literally been blindsided and have not been able to get their heads around it. I mean, the news of Bauer this morning, major publishers literally gone. I mean, that's major. And I guess, magazines have been under stress for a number of years with digital, but the fact that we've been all forced into lockdown and they haven't been able to print was just the thing that pushed them over the edge. So I doubt whether they could have communicated that any earlier.
No, and I think they've done the right thing, to be honest. It's it's a terrible shame. I mean, there is some of those publications are institutions that have been.
Interesting though, if I may, from a print media editor and journo, hey, look, not privy to their sort of bottom line, their financials, but is it a little bit premature? I kind of want to, we are going to come out of this, and okay, we all have subs to various digital publications and whatnot, but we are a nation of people who still love a hard copy of a magazine or a newspaper, and devouring that from cover to cover. And those magazines, as far as I was aware, their circulation was still really strong. A lot of brand loyalty, decent ad revenue. Hey, maybe there's some really weighty sort of corporate overheads and whatnot, but that's a huge void now. And but equally, what opportunity does that present to some hugely talented people who were employed by Bauer? So it'd be fascinating, I think, from a media perspective, to see what plays out over the next 18 months, 2 years.
Having been at Fairfax myself and NZME, my understanding is I think they would have been held up by their the cover price, because ad revenues have been going down for so long, and ultimately once that cover price of the purchase price in the shop is gone, there's the basis of their business gone. So
well, not even the cover price, people can't buy it.
No, true. Exactly.
You're getting one in, one out in dairies. You're getting limited people through the supermarkets. So when you're panic buying and buying essential supplies, I'd imagine the vast majority of people are walking past the magazine aisle trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. So if you don't even have, if you've got a product that isn't even probably being sold, I think we don't know the financial constraints that they were under already. And Danny, I'm a great one for just throwing shit out there. I think they will reinvent themselves. I think it's a clearly strategic move for them to go, you know what, let's just cut everything, protect the business. We've got some cash reserves that we as stakeholders in the business need to protect, so that when we come through this, we can relaunch something, because we'll still have ownership of all the proprietary, all the IP and everything.
They've bundled everything together, and now I think they'll be looking for a sale, basically. So I think whoever picks that up, they've got the major benefit, right? Because it's years and years of building of a beautiful set of brands. I mean, you could literally probably pick them up for $1, but because you've got a huge cost behind that you'd need.
I just got to make a phone call.
Go for it. So any one of the other media houses could potentially pick them up at some stage, because they're such valuable brands.
We've got a couple of questions that are coming. I'll take them now, because we did have a tendency to run out of time by the end of this. We've got Claire Russell, who's in a comms role for Auckland Radiology. So they're really at the front line of essential services, consideration of health industry. Her role over the last week has been nothing but writing and developing comms and campaigns. And from an email volume point of view, how careful should they be about the volume of email communication, and how can we support staff from more of a well-being point of view?
From a volume perspective, that's not really a one-size-fits-all model either. But I think it's just being mindful of what information you're putting out there, and does it feel like it's bombarding them? Then maybe pull back. Dealing with a client the other day who has a brilliant template that they've been using with their staff of 70 odd people, and it was broken into and they're an essential service, what you need to know about if you're on site, what you need to know in terms of the support we're going to provide you, and what you need to know in terms of sort of the psychological, emotional support that we're giving you. And each part of it was like, if it's updated or it's new or whatever, it was highlighted, right? So that people don't have to scroll through heaps and heaps of information. So making sure that what you're giving the people is really, really clear and, to understand. But, I think that just that regularity, like one kind of email a day, or as you said, like a huddle call in the morning, to go through how you're feeling, you know, who needs what, what's new, what's updated is really important.
Yeah. And Danny, to add to that, particularly in the first week, I don't know if you all noticed that, my email box, COVID-19, bang, bang, bang. I mean, just all these generic, I mean, I think the answer to those kinds of communications is don't bother. It's just generic and it's not going to add value.
Yes. We've updated our policy.
Yeah, yeah. So the point is, if this is going to add value and, you know, provide some very intrinsic facts to my customers, then do it. And maybe do it on a ritual basis. Maybe it's every Wednesday, or maybe it's every, you know, so people expect it in there and start to look for it if it's important to them. But I think, Danny, you're correct in saying don't expect people to read a lot of information right now because they're very distracted. And we have to take the hard yards away from them and crystallize things, even if we create infographics, you know, slightly more picture and word stuff, because people are fatigued, you know.
Concentration levels are just shot at the moment, right? I don't know about you guys, but crikey, last week was just, really hard to stay focused.
I think as well, even forums like this could be a great idea for leaders of businesses to communicate with their staff, their clients, and the wider public as well. Where if you had a once a week, a State of the Nation type webinar where you pushed it out and said, hey, look, I'm going to go live and give you an update on where we're at. I think like the PM and the Ministry of Health have done an amazing job on their daily lives in regards to the updates. And I think most businesses don't necessarily need to go to the extent of, hey, we're going to have a daily. Yeah. But if there is a once a week, or depending on the size scale of your business, your network, and how rapidly you are impacted and the way things change. Yeah. Just a once a week or once a fortnight or in line with certain announcements. I'm going to do a live address. You can register here, ask your questions in the forum, and that can be recorded and put on the site.
I think that's what Jacinda did quite well, quite early. I think is it 1 or 1:30 daily that she did the 1 o'clock. She did the update. People learned to expect that, and it created some sense of understanding and knowledge. I think the real pain and the anger is going to start next week, though. As businesses awake to, we need more information in order to make decisions. Boards are sitting there, literally not being able to make a call on a whole lot of cost items or marketing items or expenditure items because they simply don't know when people are going to be released.
Yeah. So Dave Floyd's asked, and I'll let you guys have a crack first if you like, and then I'll probably throw in my 2 cents like I always do, unfortunately, for the public. Hi, Glenn. Do you have any thoughts on how we keep a presence in, say, social media, etc., without coming across too sales-like? Could be wrong, but coming across with a sales message seems insensitive at the moment. And we're in the coffee industry, which is getting decimated. So we want to keep a presence, but being considerate to our client's position.
I think in some ways at the moment it's just about that sort of that brand presence, if you will, rather than a really hard sales message. Just keeping that presence out there and keeping connected with your audience and on those channels without a really hard sell. Because if I think the litmus test there is, does it feel icky? Then it probably is. Like you know in your tummy if what the content that you're about to post kind of doesn't seem right. And do that as such.
And also for your coffee business owner, I think they'll understand their personas, right? Of, the ultra special client that consumes every single extra special, different kinds of coffee, all the way through to the occasional purchaser. So I think you just got to segment your approach a bit and create some, what we call useful content, rather than promoting yourself or advertising your services. I mean, we all unfortunately need to have a laugh every now and then because it's all got so serious, We all need to be entertained. I mean, Netflix is going off the roof, right? So if you can find a way to tap into your personas and give them what they like, creating some video content like this, creating some infographic stuff, some light-hearted stuff, some human stuff, that will keep you in the mind, and you're not going to say, buy a bag for $12.99.
No, and we've seen it firsthand with this, with what we're doing right now. I have not put a single sales message out. Every message that I have put out over the last 2 weeks has been support. We're prepared to give. We're doing to this, and even if there has been an offer wrapped up in that, it's generally been the way that it's been packaged has been, we're drastically reducing our price so that you can afford to do this in a time of crisis or something like that. And I love the idea, and specifically with that for Dave in regards to the coffee side of it, there's the humor piece. There is so many opportunities with social media to, wrap something up and around the whole lockdown situation, the access to coffee, the stress, who's going crazy, not being able to get to the cafe.
Yeah, for coffee drinkers per se, I mean, coffee is the thing that's keeping people sane right now,
Some great memes that you could create, right, for their social media pages.
And it's a comfort, and it's a stimulant, and it's, there's so many beautiful things associated with the brand of coffee.
Yep, and I think over the last few years, with the economy being relatively buoyant, we have fallen into that sales mentality and given up on brand a lot. It's only big businesses that are focused on brand. And now's an opportunity in this environment where brand is key rather than the snake oil tactics of scarcity and fear. So what a better opportunity to get back to brand and having some fun with your brand and you'll pick up sales because of it.
Yeah, and stories. We all love stories, right? Because we storytellers naturally. So the thing is, your coffee business owner might have 10 really special clients. He could interview them on Zoom and ask them what has been the single most interesting, experience that they've had with coffee in the last 10 days. How has it helped? How has it not? And you're engaging with your own customers. So there's no downside, right?
Yep. Origin stories. Where does my coffee come from? Actually, they could Zoom with somebody in Ghana if it comes from Ghana and start building that story case up and start sharing the background and the history of all the, the bean origin versus the roasting process.
Yeah, that whole piece. As it gets to 5 or 5:15 or 6, and it's the news time, maybe coffee with a little bit of something in it, Baileys or, whatever people put in coffee sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we've got another question, which is a little tongue-in-cheek. And maybe it's too soon to be asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But with the Women's Day gone, who'll pay for the wannabe celebrity weddings?
Oh, indeed. Where will they peddle that stuff?
That people are already doing that with sponsored Instagram posts, unfortunately. So that was a while ago that one left.
That just threw me completely. Thanks, Warren. Oh my goodness. So what I'm focusing on with our clients over the next couple of weeks is I'll give Adrian Pickstock credit for this. I had it wrapped up as something else, but he's come up with a great term, and it's talking about smooth landings. At the moment, so I've been talking about, we've been going through shock, now we're going through confusion, and we're going to get a little bit of clarity when people can actually start making decisions about how they're going to move forward. And so coming out of level 4, at level 4, pretty much we're all screwed. Unless you're an essential service, you're pretty screwed. So coming out of level 4 into level 3 is, I'm talking about that's re-entry. And then back into level 2, let's go into looking at smooth landings. What sort of things should we be thinking about communicating and focusing on when we're looking at coming back into level 2 and business as usual? What's that sort of message that we should be putting out there?
What's good? I mean, business as usual. What's it even going to look like, really?
What is business as usual?
I think it's just, oh my gosh, going to have changed the landscape for so many of us, permanently. But I think again, it's just, keeping up the regular communication, making sure that everyone is kind of singing from that same songbook. And I think really, if you've got a strong team culture, then kind of coming back to, making sure that you really drive home those values, that actually you're living this. And, if it's one of innovation or, I don't know, off the top of my head, but making sure that you're actually walking the talk as you get back into whatever life is as we knew it, or whatever it's evolved to be, and bringing that team on the journey. Because,
but also let's try not to be too depressed about it. We're in this situation anyway. So when you are let out of jail once a day or twice a day and go for that little walk and have to avoid people 2 meters, that's the time to try and not think about all the doom and gloom, but to actually think about how can we pivot to the next opportunity for our business, for our staff and our team, as we come out of lockdown, what are the solutions that we can provide clients? And that's where the simple phone call to the founder, the CEO, the board member, the sales director is going to come in handy, because they're closest to their business, and no amount of sugarcoating it is going to improve. You just have to pick up the phone and speak to people.
Yep. So we've been communicating around phases rather than timelines, because we just don't have any clarity on timeline. So what we're trying to get our clients to do is start planning around phases. And then these are the sorts of things that we should be focusing as we're heading into as we come out of phase level 4 into level 3. This is how we should be. This is what we should be focusing on, going from level 3 to level 2. And if it gets below that, then holy shit, we are in business. But like you said, what the hell does the new face of business look like? And the reason that I really wanted to bring up that whole phase piece and level versus timelines is, we joked about it just before we started the call, is, who the hell, what relevance does a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan have right now today? Well, I'm massively in favor of having a rigorous plan that you can go through. Our clients, we go through, and we are massive advocates for daily huddles, weekly management and team meetings, through to monthly planning sessions, quarterly 2-day planning sessions for the entire team. We're like, you know what? Right now, let's just focus on how do we actually nicely transition from level 4 to level 3 to level 2, and what actions should we be putting in place once we start getting clarity around that.
And Glenn, what I have noticed is, even though certain businesses are limited in what they can do with product and service, many of them are showing thought leadership, and that's another form of branding, right? Because they have real definite ideas about how New Zealand economy can benefit from slightly different approach. Next week, for example, they have real ideas about teams, about how we can get out of the situation. So I think don't underestimate the value of just not hiding, but picking up the phone, speaking to your clients, and actually speaking to media as well. Trying to actually change the world around you, not just waiting for it to change.
Yeah, I use the term we need to be positive realists.
Yeah, I love that.
I think one thing I'm really disappointed on is that the City Rail Loop and the Auckland roadworks, people working on that aren't classified as essential services, because what a bloody time to be fixing that problem. Right?
Oh, I know.
What a lost opportunity that is, right?
Yeah.
We've got another client who's actually saying that the government should bring in conscription, basically, and help people build tunnels, build roads, and a whole lot of other things, because young people are going to need stuff to do, particularly if this drags out. So that's a particularly big thought, right?
So how do you think the government and any organisations have stood out in regards to the handling of the crisis and the way that things are being communicated?
I think it's a really interesting one, that, something of this magnitude, I personally kind of think that, Jacinda and her team have done, an outstanding job. My only concern probably from sort of a comms PR perspective, and hey, look, Jacinda has a PR degree, right? So she's a master at how she delivers messages. But I think it's getting those kind of key officials on the same page and making sure that what messages are actually being put out there are really clear, because, you know, things like, you know, stay home, stay local for exercise. Well, what's local to me is different to what it is for you, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I think in a situation like this, we've kind of had, we've had messages from Jacinda as kind of cool mum, if you like. And I think at a time like this, actually, probably need a little bit more from firm mum or bossy mum about, you know, what it really means, so that people are left in no doubt about what they can and cannot do, because that's sort of what, you know, the narrative is focused on in terms of, well, what can we do? And there's confusion from the police versus, you know, whatever, and, you know, pulling people over because they're, you know, for example, here in Hamilton, you know, people are out walking around the lake. Well, they live near the lake, so, you know, why can't they do that? So, you know, giving them those really clearly defined messages instead of sort of the stay home, stay local. How do we make that a little bit more clearer for people?
Agree. And it also can't be left to Jacinda. Basically, there needs to be a depth of other people coming in, and, you know, the ideas on where businesses are going next week. That's important. And the message of test, test, test came probably slightly too late, but that's hindsight is a good science, right? You can't really evaluate it. All the markets in the world are starting to say test, 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 test everybody. So, but I think it's time that a few other leaders stepped up underneath Jacinda, whether that's from the government, from the coalition, from the opposition, from business people. We all need to show leadership. We can't look at those two people at 1 o'clock every day and say, well, you're telling me what to do. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't know, and I didn't even watch it, so I've got no idea anyway.
Me either.
From my perspective, I think in general, the way things have been communicated at the top level has been fantastic. I've been really disappointed, however, in this whole what businesses can operate, how they can operate, where they can operate from, and things like that. So, you know, down to the point where, you know, I've got a friend who's got a liquor business. They can do online sales. One day on the site, you could do online sales for alcohol. So I was like, oh, great, I can go back in. We started sending he started sending things out. Apparently that was only up for one day and it was removed again, but there was no communication to say that it had been removed. So he had been operating in breach for 5 or 6 days before another operator said, oi, you're talking about this online, you better be careful and probably stop. So yeah, I just think top level, really, really good job, but it's not flowing down in regards to the quality of the communication and how it's been communicated from the various departments. So I think it's definitely in a time of crisis. It is a little bit of flying by the seat of the pants at a government level. We just need to be, they're reacting and responding how they, as they see the situation unfold. What I would like to see is a lot more clear sort of delineation and follow through from the departments underneath that are proactively pushing that information out to their networks, which doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah, and that will become even more important from Monday next week, because the productive part of the economy is itching to come back. The small butchers and bakers and greengrocers, we're relying on the bigger brands, and you go there, many of the lines are not there, and it's just waiting for big long lines. So health has been the big problem, but actually the economy is now a much bigger problem than the health. So we're not experts here and we can't make that call, but you can only hope, right? I mean, even if there's an intelligent comeback where the vulnerable people and the 70 pluses are still in quarantine, and maybe in a phased way, as you say, some go back to level 3 and some can ease their way back, that will help. Because I was speaking to a journalist the other day, and he said in the UK, he grew up with 17% unemployment, and that killed people. It wasn't just a virus, if you know what I'm saying. So poverty and all that stuff.
I actually think that this is going to directly contribute to more people dying from suicide than the virus itself.
I hope not, but I mean, you know, the anxiety, the depression, and it's even amongst young people as well. It's not just, it's across the whole board. So I hope a solution is not a one size fits all for business next week, because that I think would put a lifeblood into a number of SMEs in New Zealand. Yeah,
28% of the GDP, and it's a whole other conversation that I probably won't get into now, but personally, I think the $7,000 per permanent employee handout is a poison chalice, because it has two impacts. Number one, I need to pretty much guarantee that I'm going to have a reduction of 30% or more in regards to revenue. So I've already got that in my head. And number two, if I have staff that I'm holding on to that I'm paying $50,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year, I'm actually going backwards twice as fast as I'm going forwards by keeping them on board, because I've got that $7,000 and I've committed to another 12 weeks of keeping them on board, where I should be able to look at my business, look at the situation, make a judgment call. Do I need to put everything into hibernation? Do I need to streamline and lose 20% or 30% of my workforce? It could absolutely kill some businesses by trying to hold on too long before they make the hard decision.
Yeah, 12 weeks is a long time, right?
Yeah. Even though you can let them go at any stage and pass that on, I think it's more of a mindset problem that it creates. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they've done it. I think it's great that they're coming up with these initiatives. I just urge every business owner to actually take a pragmatic look at their situation and whether it is sustainable in the new economy, and make a decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I guess my final point is, I think people do need to stay home, and they do need to be responsible. I mean, we can see the sea, and there's a couple of people kayaking and stuff. It's like, you know, and you cross each other on the beach and you do all that kind of thing. So the issue is, if business is going to come out, those numbers need to come down, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, I'm gonna wrap it up. We could talk for hours, because I just love these sorts of conversations. I'm gonna wrap it up, and before I do, Dwayne, where can we find you if we want to get hold of you?
We're on alexanderpr.co.nz. You can just pop us an email, or mobile or email address. I'm sure we'll supply it to you after.
Yep, and Alexander PR has kindly donated a downloadable document for how to deal with a crisis, and I'll put that as an attachment on the webpage where it is, and or if anyone wants, they can direct message me and I can send it back, or just contact Dwayne directly. Dani, let me just say one thing before I let you wrap up.
Yes.
There is this little bit on Dani's website that I just absolutely love, and I'm going to see if I can bring it up so I don't get it wrong. And this, my friends, is the perfect lesson in sales when it comes to attributing value to the problem that you've got. Where it talks about pricing on the Dynamic Media website, can you even remember what's there, Dani?
I know it involves some
yes.
swear words, Glenn.
It says pricing. Right? This depends on just how much shit you really are in. Call us, tell us about the mess you're in, and we'll tell you how much you're looking at to save your ass.
That's pretty much it.
Very good. So how do we get hold of you if we want you?
All my details are on dynamicmedia.co.nz, and obviously on LinkedIn and Facebook. So happy to have a yarn and help out anyone with a bit of free advice too, if they just want to, you know, sound me out. More than happy to do that.
Fantastic. Hey guys, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on board. I look forward to maybe doing a repeat in a couple of weeks' time when we get some announcements out there and we can relook at the situation and what people should be doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks again, guys. Have a great one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.